Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I know it's been a while, but let's just jump right into this. I'm living in my car, obviously, and so I'm working out of a garage today, and this is what we're working with. So when I saw this story about people suing Target, this is happening in New York, for lost wages over walking to their workstation. I just could not believe it when I saw this article, and then multiple articles when I followed up on it, because this is something that I thought only I was dealing with. Even people at my previous place that I worked would not always have this issue, though some did. So basically what's happening in New York is, and this is very surprising to me, so this is across a couple different warehouses in New York State, I think like Albany and Amsterdam, and these are Target distribution center warehouses. And basically these people, they're saying that they walk like up to 30 minutes to get from the door to their workstation. And what is different from where I worked is these people actually clock in at the door, but they are not paid for the time that it takes to walk to their workstation. And it says that this is an enormous industrial site, and I completely believe that. And I personally have experience working at a very large industrial site, so I can understand what that's like. And so basically, these are going back. This could be like up to $2,000 per year. So this is a brand new lawsuit. I just saw this dated on the 26th of August. This is 2025, so this is just out. And they're looking for back pay back to like 2019. So that could really add up to a pretty penny there. And now where my job was a little bit different was I would actually not be allowed to clock in until I got to my workstation. I worked in a massive, massive building. I wish I were better with numbers so I could convey just how big it was, but it's along the lines of like something like this, I'm sure. And I had a very difficult time clocking in. I was working my last position before I left my job. I was working on the top floor, whatever that was. And I would walk in. HR was right there when I'd walk in. And I remember one day I was running late, and I asked HR if I could use a computer to clock in. They said, they basically laughed and said, absolutely not. I go up to the second floor. There's a workstation, and I would constantly get into this back and forth argument with a worker there. She would be waiting to clock out, and I would say, excuse me, do you mind if I just sneak past you and clock in really quickly? Now, this was not her personal desk. This was not her office. This was a workstation. A workstation. Different people would be assigned there at different times, but it was not assigned to one person. At first, she would just be very huffy, but finally she started denying me. And this was somebody who's just at the same level as I am, not ahead of me. And she would block it with her body. And finally I said, look, I need to clock in. I'm at work. I've been at work for like over 10 minutes. It's time for me to clock in. And she would say, well, you need to clock in at your workstation. Meanwhile, I'm only halfway getting to my workstation. And I tell her, I'm like, look, I'm at work. It's time for me to clock in. Excuse me. And so she says, I'm not allowed to let you do that. And and so I think we got to an agreement where she would not let me clock in before she would clock out. She would not move her body away from there. So I let her have that. She would clock out at, the hour, the minute when she was supposed to clock out. Then I would come in after her and clock in. But she would always say, well, that's on you, because you're not allowed to do that. I'm not supposed to let you do that, which is just preposterous, because she wasn't even in a position above me, and that wasn't even her assigned work desk. So I was going under the radar, clocking in what I felt was the right thing to do. Technically, I was not clocking into my station, but I want to tell you what it would have been like to clock into my station. I would have had to have kept walking across this huge warehouse, and I mean huge. We're talking football fields here. Gone upstairs. When you get upstairs and you get to the workstations, we are talking about computers where the people going to clock out, they are lined up. So you're already blocked there. Furthermore, it wouldn't even make sense for me to clock in before going to get my cart to work off of for the day. Because if I were to clock in and then walk all the way back to get to my cart, my numbers would be all off because I'd be clocked in, but I wouldn't be working. So I have to get my cart And so this whole thing really resonated with me. And so I'm just making this because I just cannot tell you how much better, how much happier I am to be self-employed. I'll tell you, it's not easy. It is not easy. And that's why I live in my car, so I can be self-employed. It allows me the flexibility to do this. I'm certainly not wealthy, but I very easily cover the bare bones of my bills. Sometimes I have extra. And I just cannot imagine just reading this article today. I feel for these people of Target. And I know that there will be people saying, that they're lazy, that they're entitled. I actually had a supervisor. Great person. Don't get me wrong. Great person. Really like her a lot. But she said to me, we're not paying you to walk. And, I would say to that, I'm not here to walk to not be paid. This is my time that I'm giving over to you, to the company. And I believe that when you walk in the door, you need to get paid. You need to be compensated when you walk in. Now, I know that people can go off on these tangents about, people, use these things. Well, for the people who don't, that's not our problem. That's not our problem. If somebody's going to go off and, cheat the system and actually commit legitimate wage theft, that has nothing to do with me. I'm not doing that. I'm just going to work. So just because other people are skirting around the system, that does not give these companies the right to steal back from most of the people. Yeah, there's a few bad actors out there. I know there are companies that have bad actors working for them. They will try to clock in remotely, have their friends punch in. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but that's not my problem. It's not. And I really think that for too long, a lot of these companies, they've gotten away with taking out what the bad actors do on just the vast majority of their workforce. And it becomes an excuse to nickel and dime them. We're not even talking about the time spent walking through the parking lot. We're not talking about that. I'm not bringing it up. Well, I brought it up, but I alluded to it, but I'm not even saying anything about that. But it just became so ridiculous. I mean, just the struggle to clock in. I mean, now I just laugh about it. Well, I don't really laugh. I kind of cynically laugh about it. I mean, life is hard enough. And it's like, I felt like I had already been through half a workday before I could even punch into the clock. And that is not an exaggeration. It was the most stressful time of the day. And this job, they were so precise. I mean, if you were like 1 minute late, you would get a talking to. And I just cannot believe that for so long, I let another adult run my life like that. If you are clocking into work, I mean, sometimes we all have to go through things. I certainly had to go through that. I had to make money, but as soon as you can, it is just so good to get out of these situations. I would just encourage you today to try and start whatever remote income you can. I started with YouTube, Google AdSense. That is, my bare bones salary, if you will. And, I started with nothing, but you can start. And I just hope that, these companies, I hope that they have the day that they deserve. I'm not bitter. I'm not, angry. I understand the entrepreneurial spirit. I understand that, competing with other companies on a global level. I get that. But that doesn't give these companies the excuse to exploit their own workers, because you need to get paid for the time that you are in that building. And if there are bad actors out there and they're skirting the system and they are creating legitimate wage theft, that is not our fault. The people who are following the rules, who are not wasting time on the clock, that is not our problem. And that should not be allowed to be an excuse for these companies to do this. Now, I don't know if that's the only reason. It could be greed. That would be speculation. But I hope that these people in New York, I hope that they do receive compensation. It's a very dangerous slope when you start putting all these stipulations on what needs to occur before you can clock in. That is a very dangerous slope. Oh, the systems are running a little slow today. Really? Oh, we have a new software program on the computer. It might take a little bit longer to load. Oh, we have another system update. Oh, now we have, and this is true, Now we have additional screens that we're going through before we get to the clock in. Now I'm making this part up. Oh, we're doing renovation over here. You have to walk this way. What is next? I mean, if we don't stand up for ourselves within a reason, I'm not saying to go out there and pick fights and pick bones that aren't there, but something like this is really big, because if we do not clock, so to speak, these things, it will run amok. They will make up any excuse. When I say they, I just mean greater corporate America. They will make up, if you let them, they will just run with it. So I think it is fair and good that these workers are stopping and saying, hey, we need to be compensated for this. Tell us below what your gripe is. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.